Greetings and salutations, my name is OJ as always, and welcome back to another episode of the DBDathon, a series of videos where I go through every single killer in Dead by Daylight, from Trapper all the way up to the now not so recently released Springtrap. I cover their lore, aka just reading their in-game bio, their power/gameplay, their teachable perks, as well as their design and my favourite/least favourite cosmetics for them. And today's object of obsession is Caleb Quinn, also known as the Deathslinger. As I do in every single one of these videos thus far, I'd like to start by reading off his in-game bio/lore, as here's a fun fact, I'm not a lore guy, and if you're looking for lore, I'd suggest going to someone like Pixelbush, who makes some really good videos on the lore of Dead by Daylight. But, with that said, his in-game bio reads as such. Born in the dust-ridden badlands of the American Midwest, Caleb Quinn was son to struggling Irish immigrants. On the edge of the frontier, sickness, famine, and death were common sights, and pioneers contended for whatever scraps they could claim while tycoons feasted. Caleb's father, once an engineer, had few options to ply his trade, as businesses posted a common sign, "No Irish need apply." His acquainted tools laid untouched for years, until Caleb uncovered them. Noticing his son's interest in the trade, he gifted him his old wrench. The devices Caleb made under his father's guidance had quaint applications, but when his father was away, they took a grim turn. He had plans for a mask that would gouge barbed needles into human eyes and rip them from their sockets, complete with sketches of it fitted on boys who bullied him. With age, Caleb's engineering abilities became marketable, and employers put their discrimination aside. Henry Bayshaw, the owner of United West Rail, hired him. Caleb first invented a gun that shot railroad spikes into the ground. Next, he made a steam-powered tunneling drill. But as Bayshaw feigned indifference, the devices began turning up at other companies. The patents stolen from Caleb and sold. A familiar sensation coursed through Caleb's blood, feeling the sharp pain in his heart. Rage overwhelming him, he burst into Bayshaw's office and smashed his face into a bloody stew. As he pulled away, he pushed his specialized gun to his boss's gut and squeezed the trigger. A railroad spike plowed through the skin and viscera, nailing Bayshaw to his desk. The only thing that saved Caleb from hanging was Bayshaw's unlikely survival. For 15 years, Caleb was confined to Hellshire Penitentiary, the nation's first private prison. In a fortress of illiterate convicts, he found an unlikely friend in the educated prison warden. He designed torture devices for him, and in return received extra meals. After a time, the warden offered to commute his sentence. He spoke of something greater than monetary wealth, political capital, and that his connections could have Bayshaw framed and rotting behind bars for life. He had only one request: make him rich, fill the prison, use ingenuity to bring outlaws in alive. Caleb returned to his workshop, and with a few modifications, emerged with something new: the spear gun. The first trial occurred when a thief robbed a Chinese laundry. Seizing on the opportunity, Caleb unleashed his prototype. Metal joints screeched as the spike shot forward, gouging into the target's abdomen. But as the spear tugged, it caught the thief's intestines and, with ungodly sound, yanked them onto the dusty road. After several iterations, the disembowelments dwindled, but Caleb had already earned his new nickname, the Deathslinger. Looking to protect his asset, the prison warden pulled strings and released Irish inmates to form Caleb's posse. The Hellshire Gang was born. For 6 years they roamed the country, collecting wanted outlaws for the prison, fulfilling their end of the bargain. After a bloody battle at Glenvale, Caleb caught notice of a newspaper headline: Henry Bayshaw purchases Hellshire Penitentiary. In the picture, a disfigured Bayshaw proudly shook the warden's hand. Caleb's heart pounded with rage, blood swelling as if it would burst from his veins. He had been sold out, a pawn in a rich man's game. The Hellshire Gang pledged their loyalty to Caleb and called for the warden's head. In a thundering gallop, they smashed through the prison's entrance, shrieking like bloodthirsty marauders. A guard raised his pistol, but hesitated. A spear punctured his chest. Caleb grabbed the man's head and slammed it against a prison cell until it spilled through the bars. Reaching the warden's office, Caleb kicked the door and was met by a fortunate sight. It wasn't only the prison warden who cowered in a corner, but Henry Bayshaw. Overpowered with rage, Caleb rushed Bayshaw, beating and bludgeoning and tearing at his flesh. The man's blood dripped from his face, crimson pooling at his feet. The Hellshire gang swarmed the warden, snapping bones with each kick. With the two men broken and begging for death, the posse dragged them to the commons, where they were left to the growing crowd of prisoners. Soaked in blood and sweat, Caleb hobbled to his old cell, hardly paying notice to Bayshaw's screams. He sat on the bed's edge as drops of blood ran from his fingertips. A thick, unnatural fog streamed through the barred window. He pulled out his old wrench, cracked and rusted, and ran a thumb along its metal, regarding it with faded eyes. He couldn't remember when it had came into his possession. He didn't care to remember. At his feet, he saw a dusty path, and at the end, silhouettes of all who had done him wrong. The boys who bullied him, the executives who took advantage of him, and again, Henry Bayshaw. Emerging from a fog were the tools to dispose of them. Unforgiving steel hooks, brilliant and beautiful in their simplicity. Pain tore through his leg as he stood, but he endured, pushing onward and walking the dusty path, leaving a trail of blood flowing behind him. Now, if I'm going to be honest, I really, really like Caleb's Law. I say that a lot for a lot of Killer's Law, but, you know, for the most part, when I read out these descriptions, they're actually usually my first times reading them in full. And, you know, Caleb's Law is the kind of classic, like, Western revenge tale, per se. Kinda, sort of. A man wronged by everyone from his birth because he was Irish. For no other reason than he was Irish. You know, my man experienced racism and then took it back to the Americans. That I'm fair game, right? I mean, besides the whole, you know, working for the warden and killing people with his spear gun, maybe not. I mean, he didn't really have any other choice, right? Poor sod has literally been wronged by every single person that he ever went against. Boys from his childhood, prison warden, Henry Bayshaw. Like, Henry Bayshaw nicked his stuff, then he got sent to prison, then he got forced to either die or, he was either going to rot behind bars for life or make the warden rich and fill the prison, right? So, man's been wronged by every single person that ever, you know, ever had to talk to him or he ever talked to. So, when he was given, you know, a posse and freedom, in a sense, although he was still on the warden's leash, he had freedom, and that was the mistake. That was the mistake the warden made, giving someone like Caleb freedom. With that freedom, what did he do? When he found out the warden had betrayed him, he went ahead and killed him. Both of them, Henry Bayshaw and the warden. That's awesome. I really like that. And I will mention it later, but I would be remiss if I didn't say that a lot of his existence, just Deathslinger as a whole, is obviously very reminiscent of anything to do with Red Dead Redemption, but I'm only saying that because that's about as far as my knowledge of cowboy stuff goes. Because here's a fun fact, I'm not really a cowboy guy. You know, like a lot of people when they were kids, they were either cowboy lovers or pirate lovers. I usually fell into the pirate lover side, just personally. But cowboys are still, you know, really cool. I like cowboys a lot. Red Dead Redemption, great game. Though I do think it is a bit overrated. That's just my hot take though. For this video, always have to throw in at least one hot take, right? But anyways, with his lore read out, discussed, etc., I would like to move on to his gameplay / his power. Now, as some may know, Caleb, I'm going to keep calling him Caleb. I like saying that. It's easier to say than Deathslinger because I trip over my words a lot. You have no idea how many times I had to re-record the lore section because I was just stuttering and tripping over my words. But anyways, Caleb's power is known as the Redeemer, a second of this series, that being a ranged power, the last being Huntress. Now, when it came to designing his power, there was clearly a question asked at Behavior, which was, how do we make a ranged killer that's different and unique enough that he can stand on his own 2 feet? And their answer was the Redeemer. where Huntress throws her hatchet and does a single instance of damage, and, you know, it is a projectile that takes a while to sort of traverse. Caleb's weapon is a gun. It is a gun. It's the only gun in this game, I think. I don't know. Does anyone else have a gun? Not that I know of. I mean, Ricky Dicky Doodah Grimes would have had a gun if they were not cowards and gave it to him as a perk. But anyways, the Redeemer allows you, the way it works is that you aim down sights, and upon aiming down sights, you're able to shoot the Redeemer. And for the most part, it's basically hit scan. I know it is still a projectile, because it's obviously the chain going forward, but it comes out so quick, it might as well be hit scan, right? But once it comes into contact with a survivor, he is able to reel in the survivor towards him. Now, the chain has a bunch of properties to it, such as, you know, it can pass through terrain only for a certain amount of time. If it goes into terrain too much, or it takes you too long to pull the survivor in, the chain will snap. When a chain snaps, the survivor will be injured if they are not already injured. And if they are injured, they'll also experience the deep wound effect. Actually, no, they experience the deep wound anyways. As long, they experience the deep wound. Yeah, I am right. Yeah, when they break free from change, they're really difficult. They'll suffer injured and deep wound simultaneously. But if you actually do manage to pull them in, you get to attack them, and it also counts, by the way, as a basic attack. So you can you can actually use basic attack like perks, like Sloppy Butcher, Surge / Jolt. I don't remember which one. I only did the Demogorgon video a couple days ago. Why am I forgetting? Anyways, yeah, you can basic attack them, and that will also do an injured state and deep wound them. But obviously, if they are already injured, you down them. Now, after he shoots the gun, he also does have to reload, which slows his movement speed and takes about 3 seconds to do. This power is very, very fun to use. Although you would think there would be an issue with, you know, the Huntress and Deathslinger both being range killers, the way you play Deathslinger is completely different to the way you play Huntress. And I cannot give behavior enough props for making them so unique in their own rights. Some of the stuff, I'd argue that Deathslinger has a higher skill ceiling than Huntress. Obviously, I've seen some crazy Huntress plays, right? Do not get me wrong. But I have also seen some crazy Deathslinger plays where they shoot through the tiniest crack you will ever see in your life on Shack or something and still get a hit. It's insane. Because as long as there is a gap, the Redeemer could probably go through it with a precise enough aiming. It's a really, really fun power to use, and I'm very, very fond of it. And I also do like, again, as I mentioned, that it can be combined with basic attack perks, because that obviously opens up your options to a lot of, you know, unique stuff. You genuinely could just put all of your effort into a basic attack thing. Rapid Brutality, a personal favourite perk of mine, works surprisingly well on Deathslinger, because after you hit them with the basic attack, you get 5% haste, which can partially counteract the slowed movement speed that you get when you have to reload, which, you know, that's a little good combination. And, you know, using Surge is just free gen regression. Sloppy Butcher just makes it even worse to heal when, you know, they're already deep wounded and stuff. Like, there's a lot of potential, right, with how his power works, and I just do genuinely find it fun to shoot. It's got a very satisfying sound to it. Like, you can hear, like, the pang when you shoot the gun. It feels good to shoot. And I also do like the sound of the chain being pulled in. That's also quite satisfying to do. But yeah, I think his power and his gameplay loop as a whole is really fun. And with all of that said, we move on to his teachable perks. Now, I know I've said this in a few videos and then been wrong, but I do think that the Deathslinger has one of the best perk lineups in the whole game. And to start with those perks, we have Dead Man's Switch, with a description reading as such. When you hook a survivor, Dead Man's Switch activates. The first survivor that stops repairing a generator causes the entity to block it for 40, 45 or 50 seconds. The affected generator is highlighted by a white aura. Dead Man's Switch cannot reactivate when it is blocking a generator. With flavor text reading, "I've seen the look on a man's face when he realizes he's going to die." From Caleb Quinn. That was my poor attempt at doing some sort of voice acting accent, and I'm not going to ever do it again. Now, This perk, really good. Very, very good, especially on killers with strong map presence. For example, I've always thought that the Houndmaster had really good map presence with, you know, being able to send a dog to search on generators. You have this perk on her, you can send a dog to go to a generator that you think someone's on, and if they are on it, bang, that generator's blocked for 50 seconds. 50 seconds is a long time, like a very long time. Obviously it has the condition of needing to hook someone, sure, but 50 seconds is a long time. It's a very good perk, and that can be noted by the usage rate listed on the website that I read all of these perk descriptions off of, which is Nightlight, and it says that 11% of killers have been using it in the last 14 days. So yeah, I'd say it's a pretty solid perk. Fits into that little nice trio of gen blocking perks, that being like Dead Man Switch, Deadlock, and Corrupt Intervention. Maybe you could make it a quadrio if you throw in, what's it called? Grim Embrace, that one, yeah. But anyways, with that said, move on to his second perk. Said second perk is Gearhead, with a description reading as such. You've got an ear for well-oiled gears. After a survivor loses a health state by any means, Gearhead activates for 30 seconds. While Gearhead is active, every time a survivor performs a good skill check while repairing, their aura is revealed to you for 6, 7, or 8 seconds. With flavor text reading, sometimes a man's best work is what puts him in the grave. A quote from the prison wardens, presumably, you know, Caleb's prison wardens. This perk's also pretty good. Good? That's like great and good merged into one. Pretty good. It's a decent information perk. It has a decent condition of just injuring a survivor, and you're able to see what gens people are working on. However, I personally have always had an issue with gens that activate or like aura reading people on gens, because sometimes the aura of the gen itself can block the aura of the survivor. That's a weird thing that I've noticed in a few matches that I've played just across the entire lifespan of me playing Dead by Daylight. It's always kind of just annoyed me a little. Like, why is the survivor not the one that gets prioritized? Like, if a survivor's on a gen working on it, their aura should overlap the gens, not the other way round. Which does prevent me from, you know, enjoying this perk to its full extent, but it is a good perk nonetheless. It is a very good information perk as well. Though if someone's hitting great skill checks every single time, it does lose value, but let's be real, how often are survivors hitting great skill checks every single time, right? But with that said, we move on to his third perk. Said third perk is one that recently got a buff, Hex Retribution, with a description reading as such. A hex that lashes out upon its destruction. Those who cross you will be punished. Any survivor interacting with a dull totem or a hex totem will suffer from the Oblivious status effect for 40, 50, or 60 seconds. If any hex totem is removed, including this one, the auras of all survivors are revealed for 20 seconds. Oblivious prevents survivors from hearing or being affected by the killer's terror radius, and it has flavor text reading, "Bloody fool, you pulled the trigger on yourself." From Caleb Quinn. This perk is genuinely fantastic. It's like that fourth perk when it comes to hex builds. You are going to do one of two things. You are either running Hex Retribution or you are running Hex Pentimento. Because if you want people to destroy every last... How you could run both of them. You know, I'm gonna say it, you could run both of them. This perk is super strong. Just touching a totem in any way, even for half a second, they cannot hear your terror radius for the next 60 seconds. That is a very long time, and if any totem is destroyed, all auras for 20 seconds. That's also insane. That can be bumped up, by the way, by Lethal Pursuer to like 23 seconds. I think it's 3 seconds. 23 seconds of uninterrupted aura reading for everyone. That's nuts. That's so strong. And obviously it works super duper well in hex builds, especially if you're running Hex Undying, because then they will be cleansing 2 totems usually back to back. Not back to back, you know what I mean. Like they'll have to cleanse a totem twice just to get rid of it. But yeah, this is a absolutely fantastic perk. It is perfect in any hex build. If you're like, you can run it with Pentimento, as I said, because people are going to be destroying any totems that you bring to life and then take back out. But of course, it is a hex totem. It could be the one that gets cleansed, which does suck, but that's the rules you have to play by when you have a hex totem or a hex perk. You have to account for the fact that its abilities may be overpowered, but it can be removed from the game. But anyways, with that said, I'd like to move on to Caleb's design, as well as my favourite and least favourite cosmetics for him. Now, of the killers that we have currently in-game, I would personally argue that of all of them, Caleb is probably the most normal-looking one of all of them. I think his base design is the most normal-looking killer we have in the game. But that doesn't take away from the fact that his design is very good. It is your bog-standard cowboy, but with some key different qualities. He has the leg brace, which is, you know, a decent thing that stands out on him. He has the glowing white eyes, which give him this, like, almost ghoulish look, along with the fact that he himself, like his facial appearance, is quite ghoulish. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Red Dead Redemption for a second time today, I also didn't mention that he kind of looks like Micah. I've been seeing it for years now. He really looks like Micah Bell, and yeah, that's pretty fitting for a man like this, right? If you played the game, which I'm sure a lot of you have, well, anyone that watches this, I'm sure like a decent few of you probably have, you will know what I'm on about. But yeah, obviously the main star of the show though when it comes to his base design is the Redeemer itself, which is a harpoon gun. That's an awesome design. It's got a giant bayonet on the end as well. You can see where the chain is sort of linked to the harpoon. Like, the weapon is what makes him stand out, because otherwise he would just kind of be a cowboy and not much more. But yeah, I really like his base design. It is a cool way to implement a cowboy killer into this game in a sense. But besides that, I don't have too much else to say about it, so we move on to my favourite and least favourite cosmetics for him. Now, as a disclaimer that I say in every single one of these videos so far, when it comes to how I pick my least favourites and favourites, when it comes to least favourites specifically, I'm not allowed to pick anything below a very rare, because if I could, I'd just say, wow, this yellow recolor which makes Deathslinger's coat green is really bad, guys. That would just be boring, right? So for least favourites, very rare or higher, and for favourites, I can pick whatever the hell I want. Because who knows, maybe someday a green rarity skin might just catch my eye. But with that said, we move on to my least favourite skin for him, that being Frontier Vigilante. Yeah, nah, he just kind of looks even uglier. The haircut is not it whatsoever. The coat is pretty close, at least in my opinion, to his base design. It looks a bit fancier, I'll give it that, but yeah, the beard is not it, the hair is not it, and the gun looks like a toy now. It's too shiny, it's too clean. The knife on the end of it is too clean. I know it's got blood on the end of it, but yeah, it's not a very good skin. It looks very bad. I can't get over that quiff. It's the quiff. The hair is the worst part about it, and it's so distracting and so bad that it's all I can think about whenever I see it. I don't think I've ever seen anyone wear these skins either, but anyways, thankfully I can choose when I stop talking about skins like this, and that time is now, because I don't want to look at his bald head for any longer. Nothing wrong with being bald though, don't get me wrong. Monks, you guys are cool, but baldness like this, nah, you look like Abraham Lincoln. It looks bad. It looks really bad. But anyways, with that said, we move on to my favourite skin. Said favourite skin is known as Twilight Storm. Now, I know I just criticised the last skin for being, relatively similar to his base design, and by all accounts, this is basically his base design. However, the additions made to it are cool enough, in my humble opinion, to make it my favourite. I am very fond of the Moth Chrysalis skin line, and this is just another member of it that looks fantastic. I love the weird growth on his arm, like the green pus stuff and the holes and stuff. His gun being covered in like mucus, and the actual like bayonet at the end being almost like melted in a way. That looks awesome. His brace on his leg is like broken apart and has butterflies and mucus as well sitting on it. And the butterflies, no, they're not butterflies, they're moths. Duh, it's called chrysalis. Well, actually, it could be butterflies. I'm going to say it's moths though, because of the sort of cloak that he has around his shoulders. And I would also be, again, remiss if I didn't mention that weird, like, greenish growth on his back. That's really creepy and cool. It looks gross. I really like it. It looks pretty and gross at the same time, which is a hard thing to do. But yeah, I really like the skin. I like all the butterflies on it. I like the mismaggled face, how his, like, half of his face kind of, you know, like, mucused or whatever. Mucused. That's a word. You get the idea, right? The butterflies are really pretty, and I like that they fly around him when, you know, it's just in idle. But anyways, with all of my praise for the butterfly moth-themed skin done and dusted, we are at the end of the video, and I must say thank you for all of the support on the previous video about, you know, Ricky Dicky Doodah Grimes in Dead by Daylight and the PTB. I don't know if I'll be using OBS to record my audio again, unless I can figure out a way to, like, silence the breaths that I take in, because they were, like, really loud. I do apologize for that. Who knows, maybe in the future I'll just use Audacity and OBS simultaneously. That might result in some weird, mismaggled, untimed audio, but that's besides the point. Anyways, I hope you have a good evening, afternoon, morning, etc, etc. I cannot thank you enough for the support as of late, and yeah, like, comment and subscribe if you feel so inclined, and the next episode of the DBD-a-thon shall be on none other than the Pyramid Head.
The destruction of hope!